Hello everybody, thanks for tuning in to One India English Live. Today we are going to have a conversation about the Indian gaming landscape. Many things have happened over the last couple of days. There's been a ban on the hugely popular PUBG mobile gaming app. Then the Prime Minister has tossed a challenge to Indian developers to make desi video games. And in the backdrop of this, we're going to have this discussion on how atmanirbhar really is the Indian gaming industry. I'm not an expert in this field. I'm a novice. But we're joined by an expert today. It's Rishi Alwani. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us on this session. Let me quickly introduce him to you. He's one of the best authorities on gaming in the country. His writings have been published across well-known publications in the country. He's worked as a product manager with Walt Disney and other well-known companies, and he's currently the co-founder of MakoReactor.com, which is a site focusing on the Indian games market and Japanese games. Thanks, sir, for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Put two quick questions on PUBG before we begin our actual discussion today. I want to ask you whether we're going to see PUBG return to India, because recently PUBG Corporation cut ties with Tencent. So does that mean they're coming back?
That's actually a good one. I think they will come back sooner rather than later. It works in their better interests. Overnight, since the ban, Tencent lost, I think, 2% of its valuation, which I think worked out to 34 billion, if I'm not mistaken, US dollars. And at the same time, we've also seen a situation where PUBG Core itself has expressed interest in coming back. And that's also because the India market, I think lifetime to date, we've had, I think, 200 million downloads on PUBG, and a monthly active is close to 50 million users. So it works in their interest to come back. They may not be making revenue per user, but the valuation play is really important for them. The only problem I see here is PUBG Core is the number one shareholder is Tencent. So if the guidelines and the idea here is to protect sovereignty of Indian data from Chinese companies, then this would become a stumbling block. So we'll have to see how it goes, but it works in their interest to fix this.
All right. Yeah, I want to ask you this. If you can help me understand, you said the revenue isn't significant, but it still works in their interest to come back to India. How does this work?
So, because if you look at it, right, a game like PUBG Mobile, you're not making money in India for a bunch of reasons. One is that even though you have the payment methods and the payment options, it's still expensive. No one's going to spend 60 rupees or 70 rupees on a cosmetic item in the game. And that's usually from a general trend. The user behavior isn't to spend money in games; it's to play and to unlock as much as you can as you play. Second part of it, and the more important reason from a business side, is Tencent has to give royalties to PUBG Corp. All right, Tencent has to give Google 30% of its cut. Tencent's spend in India for the game is a lot more. They spend on streamers to play the game on a regular basis. They spend on tournaments. They have a huge program for esports. So the expenditure on PUBG Mobile in India is on the higher side, and you're not making a revenue per user. Then it's still important from a valuation play. And I'm not saying they're not making money, but the money which they're probably making is probably from the tie-ups they do with brands. So they did a tie-up with a Bollywood movie a year ago. That obviously got some revenue in. So I think that's their process here. It's not revenue per user, but it's the valuation and money from selling that audience to other brands.
I see. All right, so let's shift our focus to what we want to talk about today is the Indian gaming landscape and how self-dependent it really is. But before we begin, could you give me a quick background on the Indian gaming industry so far? What are the popular games? Who are the popular publishers, developers?
So the Indian games industry has existed in one form and the other since the late 80s. It started with one of the first games that ever came out was from Mitashi, which actually made a cartridge-based cricket game for India for their 8-bit consoles. So that was one of the first games that came out. Then in the mid and late 90s, we saw an uptick. We saw India Games. We saw a couple of other studios that released games based on the Kargil War, that released games based on Bhagat Singh. And there was a lot of activity in the 90s around PC. And then in the mid 2000s, most of the development focus happened on mobile, and that's because feature phones were, and to a large extent still are, a big deal. And we saw a lot of studios focus on that. And in that period, we had some interesting games from India in that interim. We've had the world's first mobile game based on Spider-Man come out of India. We had Bioshock. Bioshock is basically a sci-fi underwater world version of Ayn Rand's whatever Ayn Rand's philosophy is. The mobile version of that came out from India. So, and we've had developers who are able to make games. It's just that the focus has usually been short term because no one's been able to make IP. No one's been able to make a proper IP. We've been able to make games. We've been able to develop them, but the IP isn't there. Because if I look at it, even right now, if you look at the smartphone era which we're in right now, we have barely, I think, 2 or 3 really big powerhouse India games. Which is one is Ludo King, which is for that. If you ask me, that's a completely bootstrapped operation. Game Motion didn't take any funding. They took a risk. They launched something. That's been one of the big India successes. And we've seen games like World Cricket Championship, the entire World Cricket Championship series, also bootstrapped till they were acquired by Nazara. So you have a few big titles here that are great. Can the Indian developers take advantage and bring India up in game development is yet to be seen, because I don't think we're at the stage where we have the development talent to make a PUBG mobile, but we have the developer talent to make a great cricket game, to make a great Ludo game, and to make something that's a little more snackable and easier to play for the Indian audiences. Because while I do say there are 50 million people who play PUBG on a monthly basis, there are 144 million people on feature phones on Jio's own network alone. That's not counting the others. And these are the kind of people who play, I think, 22 to 30 minutes of games a day. So there is a huge addressable audience as well within the market. The question is how the revenue works out or how much sense it makes for them to target it. So I think that's where we're at.
All right. So you said we can't move to the scale of PUBG, but then we could make a game like Ludo. I'm speaking as a completely lay person here. So can you give me what's the distinction? What's the difference between video games like PUBG and a game like Ludo? I'm sure the development behind it will also be very different. When you talk about gaming, are we talking about games like Ludo as well?
Yes, we are. We're talking about games like Ludo. I'm not talking about those quote-unquote real money gambling stuff. That's not gaming, in my opinion, because that's predatory behavior. But I'm referring to games like Ludo King, and I'm also referring to cricket. Now, the reason why I say that development for a game like PUBG is a little tougher is because, see, there are a lot of things, there are a lot of minor details you have to make sure that you pay very good attention to, right? One is the map, where people are going to land in the game, where people are going to go, how are users guided through that level without making them think they're guided, how the guns work in a game like that, is there too much recoil, does it feel great to play with? So there's a lot of fine-tuning that's required, because even when a game like this ships, there's a lot of back and forth and fixes that happen over the period of time. It wasn't that PUBG Mobile was a great game from day one. Yes, it was good enough. But what happened after that was 12 to 16 months, and even to this point, to this day, there are issues with the game that require to be fixed because of the complexity and nature of it, right? Cricket and Ludo King is still a little easier because the rules of those games are kind of set in stone, and you play around with them. You know the rules for an LBW. You know the rules for run rate and stuff like that. So that's pretty okay. It's just a question of having the design talent. It's not even a question of the coding. We have the best coders. We have great artists. It's a question of the game designers, the people who actually make rule sets for games like this, and how these are supposed to work, right? Because, for example, if you're firing a bullet in a game, it's a question of how many rounds in that cartridge. How does it feel when you shoot it? How often do you want each shot to go? So even details as number of shots per second, shots per nanoseconds, all that has to be calculated and put in. So there's a lot of math and thought process involved in certain mechanics here, and I don't know if we have the talent just yet to pull this off. To my mind, I can think of maybe 3 or 4 studios that can do it, but we're not there yet where we can have, overnight. It's not like you switch on, you press a switch and you have 50 PUBG clones. It doesn't work that way. So.
All right. Okay. So apart from the talent vacuum, perhaps, is the funding enough?
Yeah, I think the funding is enough, and I say this because we have while there are some arguments that the games industry has been traditionally underfunded, I do believe that there is enough money to go around. It's just a question of the VCs seeing the potential, the venture capitalists seeing the potential. Because there are a host of them that have taken bets on gaming, and some of them have gotten burned. And I mean, again, that's just it's just purely my opinion that I feel that they don't do the right due diligence. But there is enough talent to fund here, and there is enough developers that can be taken to the next level. And I say this because we have international companies, we have Electronic Arts, we have Ubisoft. These are big companies that make colossal games. They have India outposts because because they're willing to take a bet on the talent. So it's not like someone at EA Hyderabad is working on the next version of FIFA. They're actually working on live operations for existing games, and that's how that talent is trained and nurtured. You give them something to work with and learn, and then they take things from there. So if I'm not mistaken, EA Hyderabad is working on a bunch of games like that. So it's a question of being able to take the bet, and I think that's where the issue is: the lack of risk appetite. The funding is not the problem; the risk appetite is.
Okay, so so for something to reach the kind of popularity level PUBG Mobile had, I guess it has to be on mobile for an Indian audience which has access to mobile phones. I don't think they have access to consoles and PCs so much as they have a mobile in every hand. So are such games being designed, and is the cost okay? Is it affordable for Indians?
So the thing is, if you look at the games that already exist, the biggest ones from India are all on mobile. We have a few games that are branching out, targeting international audiences, like we've seen with Raji. Raji and Ancient Epic is a game made by I think an 8-9 man studio sitting in Pune, and that is for the Nintendo Switch, and it's coming to PC and console later this year. So those are the target audience for that game is the international audience. From a pure India standpoint, if we look at Ludo King, we look at World Cricket Championship, we even look at Octo's Teen Patti and Rummy games, which don't have real money gambling. These are actual games you can play without the gambling element. Those are also on mobile. So the audience is there. And if I compare iOS to Android, depending to who you speak to, you'll hear a number of one iOS download for 20 Android downloads, or one iOS download for every 10 Android downloads. So it has to be mobile, it has to be Android to a large degree. And in terms of whether what people are paying for, well, a lot of the audience here doesn't monetize. So no one is actually. I mean, you have people who are coming to terms with the fact that they can spend money in a game, and that's why we're seeing all these stories about people overspending in PUBG, right? We're seeing these stories where someone spent 2-3 lakhs on the game without their parents knowing. That is happening, but these are still, in my opinion, isolated cases when I think at scale. And these are cases that can be avoided with better parental controls. It's a question of parents having the better parent controls. But if we look at outside of these outlier cases, by and large, the spending behavior is yet to come in. PUBG has helped bringing the idea of spending. It's a question of how other developers are able to capitalize and make it worth your while to spend money in a game. Because Indians will spend in the game if they see value.
All right. Yeah. So, according to you, what makes a game like PUBG succeed? And are you anticipating Akshay Kumar's FAU-G? Do you think it could be a match?
So, I mean, the reason why I think PUBG worked here to a large degree was, one, you had a decent game that was pretty decent at launch, and it got better with updates. The product was good. The second thing is, from a promotional standpoint, Tencent pretty much brute forced the market. They went to streamers. They were telling them they're willing to pay them between 20 and 40 lakhs at launch. Just stream PUBG for a month and a half. They got YouTube involved in a large way. They did a web series with YouTube, and they built an esports ecosystem around it as well. So they have their regular tournaments, quarterly tournaments. They gave people a reason to aspire and play for teams and make teams a thing. So you can't ignore the promotional aspect, which I think was a large part of the reason of why the game seeped into the public consciousness. It wasn't that just because the game was good and people were playing it. There was a lot of effort put in to make people aware why they should care. And that it was basically, in my opinion, it's like they had to build an industry for them to and build a market from ground up, and that's what they did. Now, do I see FAU-G being a competitor to PUBG Mobile? Sorry to say no, and that's because I've spoken to developers last night itself. It's a story which we have put out on our site, and what they have told us is they're not looking to compete with PUBG. The only similarity is the name. They haven't put any, and I can't comment on the game on how well it's going to be because we haven't seen any trailers or gameplay footage. I brought that up with them as well. They've said that every piece of gameplay or trailer footage we've seen is all fake. They haven't put anything out yet. All we have know about the game is a poster and the press release. The game is interesting in the sense that it's going to launch as a brawler, not as a brawler, and not as a battle royale game like PUBG. It's not going to become a battle royale game like PUBG till maybe 6 to 12 months after launch. That's something that developers have even said. So I don't see this being competition at all. I see it being additive to the market.
Correct. Right. Oh, Can you tell me whether a game can reach the kind of success PUBG has organically, or do you need this marketing push for it?
So I think in a country like India, where gaming isn't intrinsically a part of our culture, you will need to push it. It needs a push. It needs to, and the push needs to happen at scale, because that's the only way you're going to be able to grow in a market like here, right? Because if I look at it, what's happened with consoles, if I look at the console market, we have probably 450,000 PS4s, roughly around 50 to 55k Xbox Ones, and around 60k Nintendo Switch. All that's been happening organically, but the numbers are still too small. That market's, it's profitable, but it's not growing. It's not being able to go outside of that niche. And that's also because, the platform holders have their own ideas of what they want to spend money on. Sony, Microsoft have their own ideas what they spend money on. But on the mobile front, you already have an audience that's there. And the timing is right, because you've been accustomed to what games are. Indians know what games are now. Now it's a question of someone to come in and fill the void and take advantage of that.
All right. So what makes an engaging game? Is there a formula that works?
I mean, honestly, there is no formula. And I say this because while it's very simple to, see a game that works and reverse engineer all of it, that's great. That'll probably get you a game that maybe makes some money, but it won't make you a smash out success. And that's because I do believe that we don't. I mean, the creative aspect of game development tends to be undervalued. No one's looking at the creative aspect of it, or what you bring to the table that's different, right? So with Ludo King, for example, what was really different was the fact that they actually tightly integrated the social aspect of gaming in a large way, and that made it stand out. With World Cricket Championship, what really worked was the fact that they were obsessive on fan feedback. They actually were willing to talk to fans. It's not something a lot of studios do, and it's able to think outside the box and think differently in a way that lets you make a better product. So I think it's very tough to, it's easy to say, yeah, just make something like PUBG, you'll make $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, great. But that's not going to take the medium forward. That's not going to take games forward, right? And it's a creative medium. It's much like movies, right? I mean, I can do a 1:1. You can do a 1:1 copy of Lord of the Rings in Unreal Engine today. Big deal. That's not going, but that doesn't take the film industry forward either. So why?
Correct. Right. And this would be my last question to you. So how serious is gaming in India, according to you? I mean, we talk about professional gamers. Do we have those? Do they make significant amount of money?
Yeah, we have so the thing is, there has been an esports professional gaming ecosystem in India for the longest time. That's been something that's existed here since since I think 2007, 2008, since that time. But however, the player's earnings would always be on the lower side, because one, at that time you're mainly playing on console or PC, like Need for Speed or FIFA, and you're up against some of the best in the world. So there's always a cap on how much you could earn. With mobile, it's changed. So like a player earns around 40 to 50,000 a month, depending which team he's with, and plus there's prize money on top of that. There are sponsorship deals. Until the PUBG ban, yes, it was very lucrative. Now it's a question of wait and see. Some teams have made commitments to their players, like Fnatic. They've made commitments to their players that they will be taken care of for the next 2 to 3 months at least, until this situation is resolved. But by and large, it is still, I would say that the bigger uptake for a career in gaming isn't in the esports front. I would say it's more in game development, because you're creating a skill set that can serve a larger audience at scale, and you can end up earning a lot more doing that. So I feel that the greater uptake, while yes, you have content creators, you have streamers, you have wannabe analysts like myself, but at the end of the day, the real money is in game development and in funding those games.
All right. And lastly, your verdict. Do you think the Indian gaming industry is promising overall?
I mean, my opinion is we've always had the talent. We've never not had the talent. It's just that, talent at times gets misappropriated or gets put to uses they shouldn't be putting use to, like we're seeing with real money and gambling stuff. That's a waste of gaming talent, in my opinion. It's just a question of directing the talent in the right direction. And now I think there's an opportunity for the industry to come together and realize, okay, there's a void, we can fill it, we have the right talent. Because see, the thing is, game developers don't get into this. The idea is to make good stuff. The idea is to make cool stuff. The idea is to make stuff people care about. So that's the mindset of someone who gets into game development. So now I think is the right time for them to focus their energies and make cool stuff.
Wow, thanks so much, Rishi Alwani, for joining us. And honestly, I'm a bit richer today. I know a little more about Indian gaming and gaming in general. So thanks very much for joining us on this conversation. And thank you, viewers, for joining in.
Thanks.